Okay, well, hi, it's Rob. Welcome to my, as usual, pretty messy shop. They say an empty desk is the sign of an empty mind. Or, no, what do they say? A cluttered desk is the sign of a cluttered mind. So I guess an empty workbench would mean it would be an empty mind, and my workbench isn't empty because neither is my mind. Yes, it is quite cluttered. So I'll dispense with the humorisms. Obviously, I'm not real good at those. Something I am pretty good at, though, is electrical stuff. That's my business, of course. That's what I do. I do electrical work for mostly for industrial and commercial type stuff. And so I'm not unfamiliar when there is a problem of some sort. Rarely do I come across a problem that I haven't seen before, maybe a different type of problem. Today, the problem was at my house. Kind of worked out that way. We got up this morning and got Happy Hair off to a show up in the Texas Panhandle, and my daughter off to Lubbock to go visit, spend kind of the afternoon with her boyfriend who's going to be gone for a couple of weeks. And I went back in the house, spitting rain, kind of blowing and cold, wind coming out of the northeast, which is not always good weather wind. Typically brings a little moisture. We didn't get much rain, but it was blowing some rain up on the front porch and the front door, and I went back in to finish my coffee and do some paperwork and kind of figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my day. And about the time I got ready to, I guess I was about to eat some breakfast, the lights flickered a couple of times, and I'd heard a couple of strange sounds that I couldn't put my finger on, but we live out in the country, and so strange sounds come around here all the time from just different things. And I finally connected that the lights flickered at the same time I heard that sound, and my electrical brain kicked in, and I said, hey, something ain't right. And I went through the kitchen around to go into the living room, and the living room was full of smoke, full of really bad smelling smoke, which was electrical related. My nose knows electrical fire. When I smell a wire burning or something arcing, I know it. And it was my house this time, so I went into a little bit, not a panic, but I got into figure it out mode right quick. And so I looked in the other rooms. No smoke in either of the bedrooms. One of the bedroom doors was closed. One of the bedroom doors was partly closed. I hadn't smelled it really in the kitchen, so I knew it was in the living room somewhere. And got to hunting around and trying to figure it out, and eventually did figure out that it was coming from the receptacle over on the front wall, the front wall where the wind was coming from. And looked down there, pulled a chair out of the way, expecting to see, something going bad. There, didn't see anything, but I could smell it. And then I remembered there is a receptacle on the outside of that wall. And I went out there and looked, and sure enough, that's where the problem was. This is the cover that was over the receptacle, except I had two cords plugged into it, and so it wasn't entirely closed, and that may be part of the problem. But the receptacle almost certainly will have to be replaced. And I'm just kidding, of course. This receptacle is toast. It's not even a receptacle anymore. It literally burnt the whole insides of it out. It arced, and yeah. Yeah, that receptacle is a done deal. I'll be putting a new one in. I hadn't done it yet. I still had some other stuff I had to do, but it kept doing it, and I figured it had tripped the breaker, but it turned out the circuit breaker didn't trip because we live in a 1950s farmhouse, and those breakers had probably never been removed, and I went to go turn them off, and I couldn't turn them off, much to my dismay. I finally had to just unplug the breaker from the breaker panel from the bus bar in there to get the power to get killed. When I did that, I saw some dirt come out of it. Now, if you've watched any of my videos over the last couple of years, you know we live in a place where the wind blows and the dirt blows, and that's just the life we have here. Out of each one, I wound up unplugging each circuit breaker and dumping the dirt out of them. That's why they wouldn't turn off. They had too much dirt and sand and stuff in them that had blown in. And this is inside the house, in the box there, and just the little conduit that goes to the outside there, it had pushed that much dirt in there over the years. My guess is they've probably never been taken out and cleaned out and looked at. And I had not done that either, because I have allowed, and I know better, but I've allowed stuff to get stacked up in front of the wall in front of the breaker box, which is just a bad idea. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about here. In fact, I'm going to do a live stream tonight. Today is Friday the 15th, 16th. You know what? I'm not sure. I think 15th. Yes, 15th of March. And it's about 6:30 here right now, and I'm going to try to do a live stream tonight. We're going to talk about electrical safety and that kind of thing, just to kind of get everybody thinking about it. But for right now, you know, we talk about preparedness on my channel a lot. I talk about preparedness of different kinds, storing food, and, you know, having, you know, the ability to defend yourself and the ability to communicate and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I always forget to touch on is the ability to deal with emergencies like a fire or like something going wrong. And honestly, that's a huge part of preparedness. And if your house has electricity, and I bet it does, then that's something you kind of need to be aware of. I'm aware of it too, but I come home at the end of a day after doing everybody else's electrical work, and I'm often, and by often I mean never, inspired to do my own electrical work. If it ain't broke, I'm not fixing it. Well, sometimes that doesn't work that way, because obviously something broke. Now, in this case, this wasn't the kind of thing that, I mean, I should have thought about it and known about it, because it's an outdoor receptacle and the dirt blows. I don't know if I mentioned that. And so, strong chance that this receptacle just got enough dirt and moisture because the rain was coming in that it caused it to arc a little bit. There's another strong chance that the things I had plugged into it, for instance, we had a cord plugs in that runs across, and it's an okay way, not a great way, but it's an okay, the type of cord I use and the way it's out there, it has one of our camper trailers plugged into it. It's kind of the camper trailer we use for a spare bedroom as much as anything, and so it's always plugged in. It's been plugged in a long time, and I really should have thought to unplug it and make sure the contacts, you know, make sure the contacts on the cord cap were clean and still good, make sure everything looked right, but just hadn't thought about it. You know, there was another cord plugged in too that got a little burnt, and it could be that it wasn't anything other than just a receptacle that failed, because sometimes they do. They've got little loose parts. There's the way electricity works. When two pieces touch each other, the electricity flows through them. If they don't touch good, then the resistance isn't good, and so it has to work a little harder to get from one surface contact to the other contact or surface of contact. And the harder it has to work, the hotter it gets. But the hotter it gets, the harder it has to work. And so it becomes a self-perpetuating problem. It begins to build on itself and make itself worse. And that is, and it could be the little screw. I meant to bring a receptacle over here. I'm gonna grab one. Give me just a second. Unprofessional, I know. All right, here's one. This will do for a quick thing. Sometimes the screw connectors, if the people use the screw connectors, which I think you always should, if that screw connection isn't tight, or if it doesn't have enough wire actually between the screw and the contact plate inside there, then it'll build up heat. I've seen that happen. A lot of places, people, whatever, a lot of receptacles have the little holes in the back right here where you can stab a wire into the back. I hate those. I've made lots of money replacing receptacles that people stab the wire in. And of course they'll say, oh, if you stab it in there and everything's good, it'll be great forever. It won't. It'll eventually go bad, almost for sure, because there's a little spring clip in there that holds it. And so that's a place that can be a loose connection. Same thing on a light switch. You can see a little bit better here. See, that wire right there is pretty tight, but it's got a little bit of movement in it. And I can't see I'm using my phone. I never use my phone to do a video, but that's what I'm doing this time. So I'm hoping that all this is on camera and it's just not going to be a stupid video. If the video is no good, just pretend like you're listening to a radio. But that contact right there has a little bit of movement. Probably would not ever really be a problem, but it might. So that's the thing. And there's no way other than going through and pulling every receptacle in your house and checking the connections and doing all that, you're just probably not going to know. And that's a tedious thing. 80% a pointless thing to do, because most of those connections will be good. In fact, by opening it up and pulling it out, you might actually loosen something up. Now, is it a prudent thing to do? Maybe, compared to your house catching on fire, yeah, it's prudent. But that brings up the second point, is what kind of a box is in the wall. There's lots of electric codes. This right here is a metal plate. This receptacle was in a metal box outside, completely contained metal box. It could have gotten really, really, really hot, almost to the point of melting, and probably would not have caused a house fire. The fire would have had to go through a small hole like that the wire was going through, so there was almost no way for fire to get through that. Now, it could have melted the wire back. Most Romex, house wire is not flammable. You can't burn it, it'll melt, but it won't really burn unless you get it liquefied hot, in which case then it kind of can. But the reason that we had the smoke in the house is because the wind was pushing against it, and smoke will go through a hole pretty easy, and so it blew the smoke in there. Boxes inside the house are oftentimes made of a type of plastic that keep it contained. So if something burns up there, they have fire ratings, if you know what that is. So that's a way that your fire is contained inside of a place where it won't spread to the house. Now, the point of talking about all that is a lot of times people will make up connections. They'll twist wires together, connect wires. Most often you find it up in attics, but sometimes they do it in walls too, and it doesn't have a box around it. And that's a fire hazard. That's an absolute definite fire hazard. If one of those connections gets bad, whether the wires are twisted up and taped, or whether they're twisted up and have a wire nut on them, or whatever else, those connections occasionally go bad. And when they do, same kind of thing. They get hotter and hotter and hotter until they begin to melt, and then will catch adjoining surfaces or adjacent surfaces on fire, and get them hot enough to burst into flame. The other problem here was the circuit breaker should have caught this problem. It should have kicked that circuit breaker before it burned to the point that it did. Because I could, from my kitchen, 20, 30 feet away, however far it was, into the other room, I could hear it arcing. I could hear that noise that it was making as it was literally arcing from the hot side to the neutral side, and just like you see a welder. It was probably something like that going on. The circuit breaker should have caught that, but it didn't, because it's got the dirt in it. That's a good reason if you have somebody that can test your breakers. And obviously getting your breakers full of dirt is not as big of a problem in other parts of the world as it is here, but sometimes they can go bad. So this is, again, one of those things that doesn't hurt to have somebody come look at. The other thing is just your general connections outside your house. Make sure they're good. Make sure they're not going bad or whatever, so that it doesn't create problems there. Another big deal with electrical fires is extension cords. I had cords plugged into this. The point of connection where it attaches to the receptacle is a potential, if it goes bad, is a potential fire hazard. That kind of a thing doesn't usually cause a fire, an actual fire, unless you got a bunch of stuff stacked on top of it, or if you've got a chair, like a big, cloth type of a chair or bookshelf or something like that with combustible materials up against it. In that case, if we'd had something combustible against the outside of this receptacle out there, it could have caused a fire that way. If you've got extension cords, more often the cause of an extension cord fire is extension cords that are kind of looped up and coiled up and then have stuff sitting over them. When you got extension cords that are kind of coiled up and bunched up and all like that, kind of a mess, they build up extra heat. And sometimes they build up a lot of extra heat because most extension cords are not a very thick wire. And so if you plug something very hardcore into it, like you got a small extension cord with a big space heater plugged into it, just for a dramatic example, then that cord will tend to get hot. You might check it yourself if you got extension cord. Just feel them once in a while, see if they feel like they're getting hot. Don't pile clothes on them. Don't set boxes on them. Don't put heavy things on them. Make sure they're open, and if you can, make sure they're not even coiled up. Sometimes you've got way too much cord for what you need. If that's the case, just kind of serpentine it so it's not laying across itself at the very least. All those kind of things are just something to think about. Now, at the end of that, have a fire extinguisher of some sort, some way to put out a fire if it gets bad. Um, Even they say don't use water on an electrical fire, but in the worst case scenario, I'm going to tell you to throw some water on an electrical fire. Hopefully, you will go turn the electricity off before you do that. But even water, even though in a house you're not likely to get electrocuted. Now, I know this is, I'm not supposed to say this. This is the advice you don't give people. But it's better to throw some water on a fire to keep it from burning and spreading than it is to walk around with your hands in the air afraid to throw water on there for fear you might get shocked. You know, don't get shocked. Try to have something better than water to throw on the fire. You can put it out into that point right there. My English friend, who all of y'all know, got us something pretty good the other day. He came across a good deal on these guys right here, and he ordered 2 or 3 of them. So we've got one in our kitchen now, one in our camper, and he's going to have one in his place. And we'll have one out here in the shop. This is just a fire blanket. I've heard of these my whole life. I guess I've never used one, seen one, or even knew what they were. But apparently it is made of fiberglass, and it's made so that you grab these tabs here, yank on it, and you yank the whole thing right out of its container. And this one's made of fiberglass. I guess I always thought they were made of wool or some other kind of something like that. Some material, obviously some material that's not going to burn very easily. You know, in worst case, you could use a cotton blanket to put over something burning, but you better hope you smother it out real good before the blanket catches on fire. Better is to have something non-flammable like that you can throw over. You get a grease fire in the kitchen, that's something you don't throw water on. I'll mention that too. Grease, that it's safer to put it on electricity than it is on a grease fire. Don't do either one if you don't have to. Do not ever put water on a grease fire. The water just spreads the grease out and it keeps burning because that grease is going to stay on top of the water and it'll get uglier quicker. Have something to put on. At least a lid to put on a pan. Better if you've got something bigger like that you can cover the whole thing with. Yeah, be ready for that kind of stuff. Remember where a phone is, and a fire can get out of hand quick, especially if you live in a trailer house. I've seen trailer house fires, and it is horrible how fast one of those will burn. Once it catches on fire at any part, it spreads quickly. You don't want that. So anyway, no idea how long this video has gone. It probably went longer than I should. Like I said, we're going to talk a lot more about this stuff on a live stream I do tonight. Hopefully I get it. I occasionally have computer problems or other problems that happen and keep things from happening. Best laid plans, you know. But that's what we're going to try to do. Safety, safety is no accident, right? And fire safety is no joke. It's something to be aware of. I've seen some gnarly stuff. Most of the time, a fire like that doesn't get out of hand, but it easily can. It depends. That's why electrical codes and electrical installations done to a code are critically important. A lot of people just want to, you know, they think they can do their own wiring. Man, I've got a friend that did some of his own wiring and couldn't be told that it was a bad idea and had 2 different electrical fires. It is 2 different electrical fires. One of them burned down his outbuilding and a bunch of his stuff. Nobody got hurt, thankfully, but it was tragic for him to see him lose all that. And I've seen other people have stuff burn up because they figured they could just twist wires together and not really have to worry about it. You know, it would be okay, and it wasn't. Anyway, don't take this stuff lightly. Be careful with it. Be ready. Do a look around your house once in a while. Go look. If you've got outdoor receptacles, go look. Make sure they're not full of dirt. Make sure they're not somewhere where they're getting water sprayed on them. Look at your receptacles inside the house. If you see a receptacle or a cord that has a burnt spot in it, don't use that anymore. Get that. If it's a receptacle in your wall, get that fixed. If it's a cord, don't use that. Now, I think there's a lot of OSHA stuff that says, oh, you can't fix a cord and reuse it, and you can, but it's got to be done right, like anything else. But don't take chances. Look around your house, do an inspection, be a little more diligent than I was. Yeah, I will confess to complacency. I get there too. So anyway, that's it. I hope you found some of this helpful. Leave me some comments if you want to. If you know, if you want to yell at me for telling people to throw water on an electrical fire, I'm okay with that. Yeah, I know the risk, but you know, sometimes you run into a burning building to bring somebody out. That's a risk too. Sometimes you eat that food that expired a couple of weeks ago and may have a little mold growing on it. You know, if you're hungry, you eat it. I'm kidding, of course. Y'all know that's what I do. Some risks are smarter than others. Anyway, all right, I'll shut up now. But thanks, y'all. Like I say, hope you got something out of this. Turn this off.